At 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call together the November 6th, 2025 school committee meeting. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. This evening we have a consent agenda posted, which are the minutes from the October 23rd, 2025 school committee meeting, as well as our oath of bills and payroll. We're gonna have a chance to review the minutes. Right, is there a motion to accept?
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Motion made by Elaine, seconded by Sean. All those in favor, give us saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect. It's our first opportunity for the citizens. Was anybody with us this evening or on Zoom that would like to speak for the school committee? It's your first opportunity, a second opportunity towards the back half of the meeting. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll close that portion of the meeting and we'll move into our recognition portion. We're going to hear from our student representative, Kavya, who will give us a report from each school, please.
Good evening, everyone. Let's start with Shaker Lane. Shaker Lane School is partnering with Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry, collecting non-perishable items until December 1st. Any community member who would like to add to this food drive is welcome to stop by Shaker Lane and drop off items. Shaker Lane staff looks forward to discussing student progress at the upcoming conferences next Friday. Shaker Lane and Russell Street had their cultural fair last night. It was well attended with over 100 students receiving a passport to visit the different countries that families shared with us. Shaker Lane and Russell Street want to thank all of the families and staff who made this night possible. Transitioning onto Russell Street, students in all grade levels have had field trips or guest speakers over the past few weeks. Third graders had members of the Historical Society share what school was like in the 18th and 19th centuries. Fourth graders attended the Discovery Museum, and fifth graders attended Boundless Adventures to work together in team building activities. The third grade team is hosting a stargazing event on November 18th to go along with their Outer Space Wit and Wisdom module. Professors and students from MIT will be on Alumni Field with telescopes and equipment to help see the moon and stars. A rain/cloud day is scheduled for December 2nd. Next, moving on to the middle school. Conference signups were sent to families on Monday. Please contact the school if you did not receive them and would like to schedule a conference. Our annual pumpkin decorating contest was a huge hit. Thank you to all the families who donated pumpkins to the school. Next is the high school. On November 1st, the DECA Club's fun run is in support of the Wounded Warriors Project was a great success. The run was organized and led by juniors Gabriel Gustanis and Brianna Presti and club advisor Ms. Smith. The event raised $2,211, going well above the original goal of $1,500. There were also LHS clubs and organizations present to raise awareness and money for their own causes, such as NHS's Rise Against Hunger and the Healthcare Club, as well as the LHS Literary Magazine and Art Club. Additionally, all remaining food to support the runners was given to local food pantries. Thank you to Whole Foods for donating the food for the fun. This Saturday, on November 8th, Model UN will be attending a one-day conference to hone their debate and Model UN skills at Catholic Memorial High School in Roxbury. On the 10th, the National Honor Society will be attending a leadership conference at the Massachusetts School Administrator's Office in Franklin. That same day, the school counselors will be taking students on a campus tour of UMass Lowell. On November 14th, an all-day parent/teacher conference will take place and there will be no school for the students. And the 20th, Latin Club will be attending Massachusetts Class Day at Boston University. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very well. Dr. Elliott, any other recognition for this evening?
I do have a couple. First of all, I'd like to thank our community for their support in building a new Shaker Lane school. Being at that meeting or STM meeting and seeing the ballot vote, to tell you, one of the highlights of my career. The support was so evident, and I just feel so fortunate to be a leader in the Littleton and know that they want to do the right things for our students and community. So looking forward to seeing our students and staff move into the new Shaker Lane School in the summer of 2029. And I'm just so thrilled. And, I was for days, I was just so excited. I'm still excited, but to just know that we have that support for doing what we all thought was the right thing for our students, and to have the community understand and buy in, because we all know how hard it is to reach a community in this day and age. And we were all successful. Yes, for Littleton, I'll forever be thankful for their advocacy for this project. And you know, the Shaker Lane Building Committee, I mean, all the members of that committee have worked tirelessly to support this project. So, and the school committee as well. So thanks to everybody. I'm one excited superintendent. See you. And on another note, we had our 9th Tri-District PD Day on Tuesday. It was an incredible day. As we've evolved through time, 99.9% of the sessions are requested by our teaching staff in all 3 districts. We had a number of presenters in our district, and the day it was just so well organized. Food was great. The organization of how we offered lunch worked really well, and everybody was engaged and excited to be there. So I'm just so proud of that day as well. I'd like to thank Mrs. Steele, Mrs. Lord, and Mrs. Crutel for their huge part in organizing that day. They work with other staff in the two districts, and it takes a lot of time organizing an event like this. So thank you, Mrs. Steele, and I hope to see this tradition go on for many, many years, because it's so evident that it's so beneficial to the staff to have colleagues that they can talk to and learn together and grow together. So again, another proud moment. I was unable to attend the Shaker Lane Russell Street Cultural Fair last night, but I heard some incredible things, that it was very well attended, and there were just lots of participation by families. And what a strong way to build community, to come together and celebrate cultures, learn about these cultures, taste food from different cultures. As we built some of the foods into our food service program, and it's just another great indicator that Littleton does it right and continues to do it right. So thanks to the organizers of that event as well, Mrs. Kane and staff, and the Russell Street staff, and Mr. McDonald. Thank you. That's it. Okay.
I feel like we talked about Shaker Lane, so many meetings. I want to give the school committee members a chance to share anything, any takeaways that you had from the town meeting or the election day, if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it was incredible to see. I had a lot of high hopes. I haven't talked to a lot of people in the community, but I was blown away by the support. And it was really awesome to see. And like Kelly said, there's so many people to thank throughout the community. The YES group and people to be kind of tapped on the shoulder and asked to kind of reach out to their networks. Yeah, there's so many people that did such great work. Really grateful.
Yes. There's nothing that I haven't already said before, but just very, very proud to be a resident of this town, this community.
I echo those same statements. That going into special town meeting, I started to get a bad vibe. I was there early, and my own daughter was sick, and I wasn't able to have all household voters there that night. And my inner circle started to crumble with people like needing to pick children up from practice and stuff. And then the rooms got busier, and then the Boy Scouts were helping keep children entertained and all that good stuff. And at some point, somebody had shown me a picture of the line from outside, and it was people disappeared into the darkness. It was the line. So I was like, I got to go outside and do this myself. And I go outside. I see people all the way to the street. Chief of police is out there. He's like, Justin, I don't know. Might have capacity issues. This might not happen tonight. So it was just wild. It was just wild to see that intense turnout. So I thank everyone that attended town meeting. I thank everyone that took some time out of their day on Saturday to vote as well. And like we've all shared, proud to be Littleton residents, proud to live here. So.
And I also echo, I was in that line pretty far back, we were walking by. And I came early actually before it started, but I was dropping my kids off and just want to really appreciate, and I heard this a lot in the line. They wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for the childcare and just the accommodations of the family room, childcare. It was seamless and easy, and you just dropped off. But I dropped off, the line was short, and then by the time I got in line, I was like down the street. It went really fast. Just the logistics of it, with that many people, it was really.
Yeah, a lot of people to thank, but it was all done very, very well. So, great job. All right, we've got one piece of new business this evening. I don't believe that we have a representative here. However, I can cover this for us. So our one piece of new business is Friends of Alumni Field. I had heard from representatives from both Friends of Alumni Field and also the Littleton Athletic Boosters. I believe that Friends of Alumni Field was almost like a special purposes type 501c3 that was formed around the time of her field and the amenities associated with that. And as my assumption is that as their students have moved on, this group has become a little bit less active. There are some remaining funds that this organization has, and both sides are in agreement that what they would like to do is sort of hold Friends of Alumni Field into Littleton Athletic Boosters. Littleton Athletic Boosters would then be the custodian of the remaining funds, and then sort of, reinvigorate some fundraising efforts related with Alumni Field. So there was, I had reached out, made an offer for someone to come and share that same exact story with us this evening. Without them being here tonight, I was able to share it. They had asked whether or not the school committee had any objection to Friends of Alumni Field dissolving, money coming over to Littleton Athletic Boosters, and Littleton Athletic Boosters sort of moving that mission forward. My feedback to them was I didn't think that was really necessarily to be a school committee decision. However, if they wanted us to be, in favor of it publicly for the record, we were happy to do so. Open it up for discussion or see if anybody has any questions that I might be able to answer. And if we have questions I can answer, maybe we'll ask them to visit us formally. But if we don't have any questions or things I can answer, maybe take care of business.
Seems pretty straightforward.
I mean, this doesn't represent a gift to the school district, so it's just
More of a blessing.
right, so it's just money shifting hands.
Correct.
So,
It is nice to know that, when we want to go to different groups, we know that this group has been dissolved and that, if there's something that we're looking for help with, we go to the Littleton Athletic Booster Association at this. I appreciate the courtesy.
No questions. I don't think this vote means much, but we'll put on record for their benefit. So is there a motion to acknowledge the disbanding of Friends of Alumni Fields 501c3 at the request of the Littleton Athletic Booster Association?
I so move.
Motion made by Janine, seconded by Sean. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Perfect. Carried unanimously. I can report back to those folks that they have received our acknowledgement. That's okay. We have two presentations this evening. The first of which is an MCAS update. Before we dive into that, I'd just like to. You're fine. Judy gave me a false start earlier, so it's contagious. I just want to visit the agenda topic here, which is an alignment to the district strategic plan standard 1. Curriculum instruction assessment, align and enhance curriculum instruction assessment to continually improve student achievement. Tonight's essential question that the school committee will be listening for is how can MCAS results inform curriculum and instruction going forward? Without any further ado, I will invite Director of Teaching and Learning, Elizabeth Steele, along with the high school, middle school, and Russell School administrators to give an update on the 2025 spring MCAS results and next steps.
Thank you.
Right.
All right. So I have the honor of kicking us off and then handing it over for John, Jason, and Colin to really dig into their school data. So tonight's presentation, just to give you some groundwork as to how it's set up and what we're going to be sharing with you. On the next slide, please. Thank you. So we're going to share pertinent information related to the spring 2025 MCAS. And then we'll go school by school. The high school will share their results and their next steps. Middle school will do the same, followed by Russell Street to bring us all together at the end. So diving right in, we know that MCAS, we say it whenever we talk about data, it's one piece of the larger puzzle for our students, right? And so a couple of interesting pieces of information about MCAS 2025, maybe most kind of put out there, is that the MCAS results from spring of 2025 were not considered for the competency determination. And this is the first time that that happened as a result of the election in that previous fall, right? And so that does have an impact on MCAS for moving forward. And it's interesting to see kind of the variances that have happened and what will maybe continue to happen as that evolves. Science in grades 5 and 8, the state is continuing to adjust the exam. And so in grades 5 and 8 this past spring, the students had half of a typical historical assessment, and then the other half was a statewide fitted test. Our students had been exposed to this the year before, so this was year 2 of that same experience for our students. And the other major piece of last spring's MCAS was that civics is the first year that it was an operational assessment for our grade 8 students. And so you'll see when Jason presents that data, it is just one data point, because that's all we have at this point in time. It does mean that the grade 8 students have 4 assessments. So it is important to point that out, that they have the ELA, they have math, they have science, and they also have civics. So it is a lot of assessing in one grade level. So when he shares that, important to keep that in mind as well. The other thing I just want to remind us of and ground us in is that 2 of our schools, the middle school and the high school, were both recognized as schools of recognition this year. And that does mean that part of that is the MCAS results. And so good achievement on our MCAS results and growth within our MCAS results did afford us the opportunity to be recognized as schools of recognition. And so that positive you will see throughout the presentation this evening. And with that, I will pass it over to John.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Steele. And while we recognize each year, we always feel like we have more work to do. We strive for continuous improvement. And I would say that we've succeeded in a great way since last year's presentation. And I noted the same thing. I wanted to, while we still have work to do, we're among a select number of schools, LMS and LHS, who were recognized as schools of recognition. And what that means is we were recognized for demonstrating progress toward annual accountability targets with an emphasis on improved achievement in ELA and math. So I just wanted to reiterate that, and I'm grateful for that recognition. You had a chance to look in your packet for the public. They can see the slides here, as well as they know they can have access to the packet. Moderate growth in ELA. For the graphs, we use a software platform called Open Architect. And sometimes the numbers are a little bit off, a percentage point or two. Like I noticed that from the school district profile, like, school DESE might say 74%, Open Architect reported 75%. Not exactly sure why that happens, but it does happen. We've noticed it over the years.
Could be the out of district placement, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for that out of district placement
Yeah.
versus.
Sometimes it's that, but we have tried, that could be that with Open Architect, but we have been striving to focus specifically, I would say, at the high school and try and present high school specific data, since that's what sort of the variable we control on the campus at 56 Queen Street. But with that said, you can take a look at the graphs and see that we exceeded our exceeding category in ELA. Our scores went up about, depending on which graph you're looking at, but 14 points from 10% to 24%. The partially meeting scores, we're happy to report, went down from 12 points from 33% to 21%. And that's a good thing because, it means we had more kids scoring in the meeting and exceeding category. It may not always be the case when scores go down, but in this case, it's a positive for us. Overall, the meeting and exceeding category went up 9 to 10 points. So happy to report that. You can see the SGP and that's how our students compared to similar house to peers in the state who scored similarly at the 8th grade test. And moderate growth is good. And you'll see on a slide coming up that we had high growth in math. Now we do have to acknowledge that meeting or exceeding is not where we want it to be at all. The students with IEPs. It's important to note that it's a very small sample size. It's not even less than 20. It's it could be 12 to 15 students depending on the test. So it's a very small sample size, but not where we want to be. I met with some special education teachers. I've already met with the departments to talk about this. We're going to do a real granular analysis of in terms of item analysis on the test and really look at the 9th and 10th grade and see what we could do across the board. This is a phenomenon that happened across ELA, math, and science, and it's a continual challenge for us. But we're not happy with it, but we also recognize, in fairness to the students and their families, that it's a small cohort, small sample size. These students, in many cases, have significant disabilities and really struggle. And sometimes, and I've said this in previous presentations over the years, sometimes their score is the best they could do on that day, and they exceeded, even our expectations, although it's not comparable to where we want them to be on a state test. They worked really hard. In some cases, we found kids that didn't work as hard as they should have, and that could correspond with the test not, counting for graduation. They're required to take it, but they do not have to. The requirement to pass is not there. I think we found some of that among some of the motivation and attitude of some of the students approaching the test this year. At the high school, we made some adjustments based on last year's performance to go back to a previous way of testing where we put kids in smaller groups in classrooms. We had too large of a setting last year. We think that made a difference to the smaller setting, getting them in classrooms, not testing as many students in the library, that kind of thing. And I think that had a positive impact. But I just want to be, I'm sure there'll be questions about it and we'll answer them, but I want to let you know that we take that as a challenge. Although the sample size is small, we want the best for our kids, regardless of their abilities and skill levels and struggles and motivation. But it's not where we want to be. But with that said, I'll go to math. The math slide, and you can see high growth since 8th grade, and that's a great number to have. That SGP, student growth percentile, 71.2 points. Meeting exceeding was great, 74%. We're getting back up there. Partially meeting scores went down in a good way, 32 to 23%. Our exceeding scores went up 22 points from 19% to 41%. Overall, we were up about 10 points from 64%, 74% for meeting and exceeding. SGP, 21 points higher than the state. That's important. So thank you to all the teachers and the students for their high performance and showing growth over time. And especially high growth for this cohort in math. Again, we're challenged with about 12 students in math. It's a small sample size. We can't really get into detailed information tonight about that, but they didn't perform as well on this particular test. We did take a look with students. This is focused on students with disabilities who have IEPs. We do have students with disabilities who have 504s for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's emotional, not always academic. Those results were better. We did a little internal analysis of that. And so we were pleased to see that. Again, the sample size being actually larger than the IEP group sample size, but better performance overall. And so I think the lower performance of some of our students with IEPs is indicative of the significance of their disabilities. Next slide, breakdown. Take a look at that. Meeting exceeding 83%. Specifically, give a shout out to Mrs. Berlinger and Dr. Finity because they are our biology teachers, and they work really hard and they work close collaboration with each other. They did a great job improving student performance in biology. Exceeding scores went while the exceeding scores went down slightly, or about 10 points. Partially meeting scores went down 13 points because overall meeting exceeding went up 15 points. So we're really happy to report that. Again, and it's acknowledged by all the teachers and the department coordinators that we have challenges with students tonight with IEPs not scoring as well as we would have preferred. But overall, results, next slide. We get some impressions. They're not always the first one, so I won't read that. Left-hand side of our strengths, significant upswing. And I don't want to be repetitive, but you can see that there. Significant increase in student scoring exceeding, but that's great. So we had a lot of high performance. In fact, I was impressed that I think biology and might have been, it was math, had at least a half a dozen kids who had perfect score on the test. And number of students, probably anywhere totaling up to 10, maybe 12, very close to perfect scores, like just a, question or two off. When we really looked at it, they took a peek at it again before coming over here tonight. And I was like, wow. Some of these, so one of the things I want to do, we want to recognize this achievement. We have to come up with some type of way, the high school specific, I'll speak for our school, of trying to recognize students who put forth a really good effort, trying to motivate kids. I give them a shout out, say, you can add this to your college application, if you've scored exceeding and that kind of thing. What we'd like to do is have recognition breakfasts for the students who scored in the exceeding category or who demonstrated high growth. So even if they didn't score, a perfect score, but we had a lot of kids show, they had SGPs of over 90 since 8th grade. I mean, it was a startling statistic when I looked at it again today before coming over here. And I want to recognize them with a certificate of, recognition and have, we help them build their resumes up for the college application so they can have some accolades and things to cite on their college apps. But I think this will also, maybe this word will spread that you get recognized for showing good effort. We have to come up with some type of alternative since the requirement, is there anymore to, the requirement to graduate. Passing grade is not required. Challenges, already acknowledged it, partially meeting expectations. We'd like to move those students into meeting expectations, if not exceeding. And while a small sample size, talked about that probably the most tonight, and I don't want that to overshadow the fine achievement and recognition our students who did really well deserve to. There's always a sense of a bias toward where's the weak spot, and so I'm acknowledging that in a very candid, forthright way tonight. And then next steps. Some of them are similar, but I made sure to change them up. And I asked, there's a long list, but this is just one slide for a condensed presentation tonight. Each department has their own detailed list of what they're setting out to do. And some of them are targeting specific questions and things like that. But, for the school committee tonight, I'll just highlight a few specific ones here, or, overall ones. Improve performance of students with IEPs, provide specific MCAS practice. Progress monitoring intervention. That's something we tend to do every year, but we want to do that in a more intensive way by really looking at the kids in the 9th and 10th grade who have IEPs and are likely to confront a challenging test. We know the cut scores did change in 2022. So that's something that, it is a little bit, more challenging to score in that meeting expectations category. And then, what happened over the course of the last 5 years, we're trying to get out of that little dip that we experienced, especially in 22, 23, 23, 24. ELA increased their goal is they gave me a list, but one of the ones I wanted to highlight for you tonight is increased daily writing practice of notebooks, journals, continued time writing open responses. This is something they feel will really help with the open response questions and the essays. Math wants to really emphasize math vocabulary, especially for students who have not retained vocabulary from previous courses. They also acknowledge that some of the questions that, 2 or 3 part, the little more involved, there are some more involved questions they want to explicitly give students practice with that. They thought that was something that was going on with some of the items where they might have been tripped up on. Biology continue to work with students with constructive responses where they're not just given a choice, but they have to write their own open response and show reasoning and evidence. That's something biology has done a great job with and wants to continue. And continue to provide, this is part of our school improvement goal, continue to provide common playing time, math, and all the departments, both Mrs. Berlinger and Dr. Finity in science have already met. The math department's already met to review the MCAS results and plan next steps, as has the English department. And that process will continue even into other departments, but specific to MCAS, that will continue. We'll do it. We'll have another common playing time if it involves providing sub coverage for a for a class that they, not able to teach because they're gonna be together. We're gonna prioritize that. So that's what we mean by that. But I don't know if we're gonna take questions at the end after the presentations, or we're gonna go one by one.
What's
Happy to-
the pleasure
It's
tonight?
better one by one because.
I
if
agree.
Then you have to go back up.
And then they all have to
Yeah.
come back up again. and
Yep, so
We make
Feels a
them
little different tonight.
get more stiff.
sure.
Any
Happy
questions
to
for Dr.
answer any
Harrington?
questions you
Questions,
have.
comments?
Yeah, I have a few. The one call, I appreciate that you're already looking at ways to motivate students because it is a different playing field, right?
Yeah.
I was just curious, I love the recognition breakfast. Has the state addressed this at all? Obviously, at the state level, we've changed this. I was curious if they've thought of things, right?
Well, they rely on they've gone back to this, well, it's always been there. There's an incentive for John and Abigail's, John and Abigail Adams scholarships for the University of Massachusetts. If you can, based on if you're in the top 25% of your class, in schools that are high performing, it's harder to get that scholarship because there's so many, you might have done really well, but there's a whole 25% of other kids ahead of you. Then there's the Koplik scholarship, Koplik Mastery Scholarship. And you can get that as well by applying for it based on your performance on MCAS and also including your AP scores and some other things. I was encouraging students last year who were going to state schools. In some cases, it's raising their awareness. We made sure to advertise and get the word out. But I think that was sort of after the fact. You did well. You need to know about this. You're going to a state school. A lot of our students look past that because they have goals and they accomplish them to go on to selective private schools, and they have no interest, in going to necessarily. They're set on going out of state as well. You saw from our college list of where the kids matriculated last year. A lot of kids are moving going down south. It was extraordinary, actually, the number of students that went across the country too. We had students going to California, Midwest. It wasn't just down south, which is a trend across the Northeast, where a lot of students are seeking, the big time football scene and everything like that. And we know no shortage of students who are interested in that too. But for students who are staying local, they can be incentive, the Koplik and the John and Abigail apps. And I think it would help to make sure that they and their parents know about this before the test. If you do well in this testing, you can actually, you get John and Abigail Adams is full tuition. Now, granted, the fees are higher than tuition at the state schools, but it's free tuition for 4 years. And that's substantial savings. So we want to make sure we advertise that. And there might be a few other things we'll think of, but I think that helps. I might give you a sense of what we're trying to do.
That's great. I just have one other question. And I'm always hesitant to call out certain groups because I think everyone's trying to strive everyone to do really well. But I understand that there's more IEP, maybe out of 4 kids struggling on the tests. Is there a way to see against other districts how that's working, right? So if you were to isolate IEP kids,
right,
students,
we can look at district profiles.
Okay.
So that's actually available to the public. Subgroup data is available. Okay. And one of the things we did notice too, and it's not a part of tonight's presentation, but in our analysis, and we don't want to get too granular with school committee, but one of the things we're concerned about is the male-female distinction at the high school, the difference. There was a significant difference in performance in certain areas for males and females on this test. And we want to look at what we want to do before we put a wider for a larger forum like this is gather grade data to see if it corresponds with, probably does with final exams and, final grades for the school year. But there was something I certainly noticed. I think I have it here. And it's not to open up, a whole other topic tonight because we didn't have this in slides, and it requires further exploration and investigation. But just at ELA, 86% of our females compared to 64% of the males were meeting or exceeding expectations. And that 22% difference between the males and females. In terms of in the math, we had 10% difference, 79%. Females were meeting exceeding expectations, 69% of the males. And then biology, and the department coordinators in their analysis pointed this out, as well. They caught it too. It was another, it's like a 13% difference in biology. So that's across all three tests. So it's not a stat. It's a subgroup we want to look at closer and see what's going on there. there is a lot of conversation across the country, if you're listening to podcasts, watching the news, about concerns about, academic, the academic achievement of young men, boys in particular, compared to girls, where girls are outperforming them significantly, according to national trends. We saw it here on this test. So I just wanted to acknowledge it.
Thank you.
Anything else for John?
Rick, is there a way to use the MCAS over the years to help students understand their individual, their personal achievements, their personal improvements? Is
Yes.
is-
Because they get it. The perfect way to do it is conversations at home, because there's a specific, and we can do it at school too, but everybody gets this, and you as parents, if you have, if students in grade 3 beyond, there is a real detailed report that the state provides. What to parents, and eventually the goal is to make it online. I don't think they launched it. They had a plan to launch an online portal for parents this year, and it's on hold for now. So they're mailed out to the parents, but it's very detailed. I'm sure a lot of people just look at a glance and they say, well, you met expectations. Some people might sit down and really go into more detail about it, but there is a real detailed report that goes home.
I know it's part of a cultural, it would be part of a cultural shift to be like, you meeting these things in the state is fine, but what we really care about is that you, our student, self-improve. What you did last year, we're gonna, we want to see you get better over the year and at your own rate and help.
I think that might be an interesting conversation with the special education liaisons, to look at eighth grade data and say, hey, in a way that doesn't ramp up anxiety for the kids. Some kids, a lot of them might have test anxiety, but just try to be balanced about, hey, how do we help you grow? What do you think we can help work, kind of like a success plan, a goal, but just even a couple of goals.
Not holding them up against other things, but holding them against themselves.
Because I mean, I think in many cases, we see that there's a correlation sometimes between their academic, sometimes it's not there, but often between how they're performing on their term grades as well. This is one snapshot time, as we always say, and we're always cautious about putting too much emphasis on one test. But this is a data point that we don't want to ignore, and we want to acknowledge that, what was going on with that kid that particular day? Did they not take it seriously? I can tell you, absolutely, there were a number of kids that did not take this test seriously. I looked at we printed out the essays for some of the kids, and then you just see I don't know. I imagine it's weighted. I need to look and see how many points they lost, but they wrote a couple of sentences or a short paragraph. It was actually worse last year when the kids didn't write as lengthy, but our English teachers really pounded into them. You have to get right. And our kids responded to that. And that's why we saw so many kids in the exceeding category. But some of our kids who really struggle and don't take the test as seriously, or just like schools, they're less motivated and they're challenged by it. They wrote just a few, they didn't write as much, and that was to their disadvantage.
Another quivering.
That would be something for us specifically to talk to kids about.
Oh, yeah, but another arrow in your quiver of helping kids feel motivated. You talked about a lot of our kids are going out of state, they're going to different places. It used to be, I think it still is, you can negotiate college financial aid packages. So no matter where you're going to school, if you do really well in the MCAS and you apply and get accepted to a state school and get these scholarships, you can take them to the schools that you want to go to and say, gosh, I'd love to come to your school, but look at all this money that this school is offering me, and I won't be able to bring that scholarship. So what can you do to help me?
Something to think about, especially with our neighboring New England states. I know Maine stands out for that. They're trying to get Massachusetts students. They even put billboards up about it on the highways.
And they'll want the best students. They'll want the ones that won these scholarships. So this, no matter where you go to school, doing well on these is going to help you with financial aid and to save money.
Yeah.
Just speaking to people's heart there.
Yeah, sure. The wallet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bar graphs, it's very impressive that with every subject area, they jumped up from the previous year. So as an entire cohort.
I
that was
appreciate
really
you
good
saying that,
news.
because
Yes.
these are positive results compared. to
Yes.
last year. We've shown-
But, you know, we talk about the subgroup of students in IEPs because that's the data that jumps out.
Yeah,
But also recognizing it's such a small cohort
It
in a
is.
small district. So we're really talking about individual disabilities at this point. And
I
I
can
guess-
say, look, we look at those, we know this, and these are numbers, right? We know the students' stories. We know their families. We work with them daily. And, you know, and it's to us, and in some cases, although we put a lot of effort into helping them do as well as possible, and their parents do too, they're not necessarily, we're not always surprised by the results, especially the students. You know, our students testing regardless of the significance of the disability, they're checking the box, they fulfill the requirement to take the test.
And, you know, that's sort of the problem with MCAS with all students. This is not giving us information that's going to help us teach individual students. Like, I think the MAP scores
Yeah.
are much more important when looking at
Yes.
students.
Yeah, I think.
I
that
mean, this data that we get on
an adaptive
MCAS,
test.
sometimes it turns into like, you know, this is what we use to compete with other districts. And Desi says that's not the intent, but that turns into the intent
without,
because
you know,
that we can't use them to help
Yeah.
individual students.
without revealing identities about students, I mean, some of these students will not, they're not part of their plan to achieve a high school diploma,
Right.
but they took the test.
But the point I wanted to make is that, you know, when we talk about next steps and how to support students with performing better on MCAS, it seems like it falls into two buckets. Like, we want to work on helping them with their test taking skills, which is what it
Carryover.
seems like when you're talking about doing more work on vocabulary, doing more work on how to write an open response question, you know, how to write lengthy essays, you know, so there's that bucket, but then there's also I think it's so important to look at the item analysis because that, you know, for background, so every question on MCAS is tied to a standard in our frameworks. And so that's one of the reports that districts get is how well students did on each question. And then you sort it by standard. So you can actually tell, you know, where your curriculum is strong and where it may.
So the curriculum is pretty strong in the fidelity to it. Across the board, that vast majority, I don't know, I don't have a number for you tonight, but our students outperform the state at every item, you know, pretty much, you know, state performance, which would be, we expect that. We actually don't often put up state comparisons, but
Yeah.
if we did, it would be like, oh, we're 33% better than the state on this, and it looks, you know, great.
But there's always surprises,
it's
you know,
also
when you
huge.
do the item analysis,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I didn't realize
Yeah.
that so many students were getting low scores on this standard. We need to go back and look at our instruction on this standard
thankfully, our
and do better
teacher-
for the kids next
Our
year.
teachers do that.
Yeah,
And I appreciate that you mentioning the transferability of the skills that we're going to be teaching to other domains, other tests, other coursework and coursework beyond high school.
Right.
But those are the skills are the important piece that we're trying to part.
absolutely. I mean, as we keep saying, this is a snapshot in time. You know, this is one cohort and, you know, what you learn from it, you know, those kids are already moving on to the next year by the time you get the test scores. So it's not like you can help those students in that moment. So, but I think we're all clear-eyed about
Yeah.
what the relevance of MCAS scores. It's a
Sure.
snapshot.
Yeah.
It shows us where we need to do better, but also with a small district, the number, it's really, small cohorts mess with the data for
You know,
sure.
so overall, candid, really a positive report tonight, you know,
Yeah.
to share.
I'll echo what everybody said. John's the year you needed, right? The trend going.
Reverse that trend line.
Yeah, the trend going into this year was not the angle we were looking for, but across the board, phenomenal results. So I thank the students for their effort and the staff for their effort as well. I love the idea of the recognition breakfast. If you need to lean on the school committee to help with the recognition, I think that's maybe something that
Okay.
we would come out for and maybe say a few words
Okay.
and congratulate those students. there is a trend throughout the presentation on the IEP subgroup that I think we're all familiar with. And, we drilled down a little bit, but I think maybe we can maybe hear like a generalization after the conclusion of the other schools, because there's a little bit more data available in terms of student growth within the IEP subgroup that the district's focusing on as well. But for those of you that are listening, the school committee fully acknowledges that the subgroup of those on an IEP, far less than desirable, as stated during the presentation, candidly. But more information to follow, I suppose, on that.
Yeah,
But
and
I think
thanks
high
for
school did a
mentioning
great
the,
job.
thanks for mentioning the SGP, because although the performance wasn't where we wanted, the students did show moderate growth in both ELA and math
Mhm.
since their eighth grade, since the time they took the test in eighth grade. And that's specific to students with the IEP. So thank you for mentioning that.
You're welcome. It was gonna come out at some point,
Yeah.
so.
So,
All right, very
This
good.
is my 4th year.
yes,
Remind me SGP.
student growth percentile.
So the 10th grade is being compared to themselves in 8th grade.
Yeah, well, to their academic peers, how is students who perform similarly to them in eighth grade, how do they perform? So they were in the 54th percentile compared to their academic peers.
Other 10th graders.
To other 10th graders across the state that scored similarly to them. So that's why it's extraordinary when we had so many students, and I like just might want to mention this in a future school committee, who scored in the 90th percentile, like they had SGPs of 90 or better, and it was a significant number. So that shows you the value added from our instructional delivery and the student effort. Because since eighth grade, of course, that was a different time, there were different things going on back then.
Sure.
And so there's a 10th grade test when they take ELA math, and our students take, just so to be clear, they take the biology test in the 9th grade, unless we have some students who we have, take a bi-year and they wait and they take it in the 10th grade because of often on IEPs, they need more time to grow and develop. The requirement by the state is that they take the science MCAS test by the completion of their 10th grade. So we have a small subset of kids who do that in 10th grade. But overall, the biology test, 9th grade test, ELA and math are strictly 10th grade. Yeah. So yeah, the growth is there for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're up. Jason, never hard everyone.
Ghost hunter.
No, I'm not gonna sleep tonight. You guys are not making it better. Don't do well as a parent.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just gonna jump right in. As you can see, we've done really well the last couple of years being nominated by the state to be Blue Ribbon, National Blue Ribbon Schools is not something that, happens often. And, maintaining that level of achievement is really what we're trying to do. So as we go through these, I think we have the most slides because middle school has the most tests of anybody. So we'll go through kind of quickly, but if you look at 6th grade ELA, that was really where a lot of it started a couple of years ago, was the idea of breaking ELA into reading and into writing. What we saw was just an explosion. The nice part about that, you'll see this as the slides, if we just talk trends, that's carrying its way up through 7th grade and now 8th grade. And that's really what we're looking to see, the things that we're doing. Are they one-offs or are they compounding as the kids go through? So as you look at our 6th grade ELA scores, high growth percentages, meeting and seating is great. We dip on the IEP level, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And, John named a few, and, some cohorts are stronger than others. And when you're dealing with those numbers, they can be a little bit radically different. But our 6th grade ELA continues to stay strong as we move forward. Next slide, please. Math, seeing that moderate growth, we're hovering right about where we were last year, which isn't the worst thing in the world. Again, a little bit of a dip in the IEPs, but not so drastic. But again, we're starting to see some of those changes as well. We've had some staffing changes the last couple of years. We've got a real opportunity to really see our scores take off in math like we have in ELA as we move forward. Next. 7th grade ELAs, like I said, this is where you start to see the benefit coming through. If you look at the median exceeding, right, it's a small jump from the previous year, but really when you look at like students on IEPs to see a 12% jump, that's where that stuff is starting to pay off. The growth percentages and everything's starting to pay off because it's now making its way up and through. Next slide, please. Again, 7th grade math, right? Seeing that small incremental improvements as we go on, which is what we want to see. You know, that meeting or exceeding number, we have every reason to believe that that's going to jump. And we'll talk about staffing here in just a minute. So small incremental improvements there, which is what we want. I think, you know, if you can't expect to have like these rocket ship takeoffs every year, that's just not realistic. And so I think where we are is that idea is like, as long as we're making that current steady growth, then that shows we've really built a solid foundation. Next slide, please. Right. Again, you can see it's starting to pay off in 8th grade ELA, right? Rises in our meeting and exceeding. You know, these things are trending upwards when we look at all this. You know, the IEP, just a little bit of dip, but to hold steady. You know, sometimes it's difficult when you're comparing grade year after year because the kids are different. It's apples and oranges. So really you start to look at cohorts, and we certainly do when we go through that to see as a cohort, are we seeing certain trends? And those will come up here in just a second. All right, next. All right, math. Again, nice jump for math in the meeting and exceeding. And as we start to trend up, we'll see those same things. All right, moderate growth overall, but we're great with that. All right, you can go to the next one. All right, science and technology. There's not as much data, you know, subgroup data as we have in some of the other things, but we have, you know, we're holding strong at that 67% mean. You're seeing a little bit of a dip across the board, but nothing that would startle us to say that this is a downward trend. Next. And civics, yeah, there's a dot. So to glean from that what you wish. If we assume that the numbers in terms of the meeting exceeding, you know, are the same across all subjects, then we're right where we ought to be in civics. We'll need a couple of years to see where that number is. Do more kids do well on that test statewide, and therefore these things push up? We just don't have the data yet to be able to determine that. All right, so a couple things that really want to focus on here. One, if you look at our grade 8 cohort last year, the current 9th graders, their scores have improved year over year from 6th through 8th grade, which is what we want to see. Math had their best year in terms of meeting and exceeding since before COVID. Right, we're getting back to these numbers, and we're seeing that return to excellence that we know we can do, and seeing high growth and my growth in most every subject. You know, a couple of the challenges that we face, we've had some staffing issues in math, but I really like where we're at now. Our 6th grade teachers moved to 7th grade. We've hired a wonderfully experienced 6th grade teacher who's there now. I think we've got a real solid foundation for mathematics and the way we want to start looking at it in the future. We're this building thinking classrooms model where the kids are up and moving and collaborating, as opposed to just the drill and kill Russian school of math style. So that, as it makes its way through, I think we'll really start to benefit. But maintaining high growth in all areas isn't easy. It's just hard to do that. And so if you have a small dip and then we see it go up, and then our special education scores, some areas have improved, some that dipped, and that's something we will continue to look at. There's one more slide, I think. So overall, our next steps, what we really want to focus on is providing training and support for our special educators, delivering that in class and small group support. Mike Jarvis, who is here tonight, has done a great job of sort of envisioning what our learning center classes could look like, as opposed to just, hey, we're going to work on homework and we're going to practice these things. It's really sort of station-based idea where the kids are having an opportunity to work independently with an educator in a small group, and be able to work on the things that they need to, keeping this flow and this routine down. So we're hopefully be able to infuse more curriculum and more remediation into those moments, and giving students a chance to really work with those skills, as opposed to a special educator has such a wide range of students that they have in front of them. It can be very difficult. If you're the only teacher, you've got this. This will hopefully help streamline that and make more efficient, more productive the work that our special educators are doing. Really focusing also on executive functioning strategies. For a long time we talked about anxiety and mental health issues. I think what we're really starting to see, at least at the middle school level, executive functioning being more and more of the problem, helping kids with task initiation, maintenance, bringing it to a close. Those are the skills that we're really seeing in middle school kids struggling. That sense of, I'm anxious because it's so overwhelming, I don't know where to begin. And so rather than treating the anxiety, I think it's really more about the executive functioning. What skills and strategies are we helping students to develop so that when they see something that they don't know, or they see something that looks incredibly large and they can't do it, how do you find that entry point? And so that's part of what we're going to be working on in our learning center classes, but I think across the board too. Looking forward to sort of having more discussions about student executive functioning and how we can incorporate that, not just in our special education classes, but across the board. And that's the middle school.
Jason? Real quick, now you know what you said about executive function. What's an example of something you're doing to help support them with that, improve the executive function?
So for a long time, I think we all thought that executive functioning was, okay, let's have the kids take their backpack, right? Open it up. Let's organize your papers. Let's organize your materials, get your homework down. Let's go to your locker and make sure everything organized. I've just learned a lot over the last year about what executive functioning really is. And it's so much more than that. It's really about preparation and helping students become prepared for the obstacles. So identifying what the obstacles that they're going to face are, and then setting up a plan for how to deal with that so that they're not on their heels when an obstacle does show up. We've talked about it, we've looked at it, we're prepared for it. So that obstacle could be anything from I'm just distracted in class. That obstacle could be, listen, when I get home, I've got to take care of a sibling or I have to do this. So how am I going to plan this differently? And that's really what we're talking about with executive functioning is really sort of thinking through, yes, the organization is a part of it and giving kids tools and strategies, whether it's graphic organizers, helping them with their calendars, but also really talking about putting a lot of front work into this so that now we're just, the kids aren't shocked as they go along. So that's where we want to move towards this with executive functioning is the organization is a part of it, but it's not just that. I think we have to have those strategies about how does a student go into something when there isn't somebody right there helping them. That's great. So that's, I think, where we're going to go with this.
I'm always shocked every year when I hear how many subject areas are tested at the middle school. Like I know it, but when you see it all in one slide deck, it's like, this is unbelievable. And now that you've got the civics test at 8th grade to pile on to those 8th graders. So how do you create a culture in your school where you manage the stress level around MCAS, the expectations, how to build it into your school culture so it doesn't dominate?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, we also just found out this summer that our 8th grade gets the joy of taking the NAEP test, this national exam that happens. We've been selected. It sounds like a great honor, but it's one more test to pile right at the beginning, right at the front end of all this. So our 8th graders now will have a 5th test that they get to take. I know. So yeah. So to answer your question, how we do this, what we started a couple of years ago was really around rebranding MCAS in the middle school. If the teachers are talking about it in a negative way, how are the kids supposed to? So if the kid's like, oh, you got MCAS, so, just suffer through it, just get it done. Like, you know what I mean? We do that and the kids are going to model and mirror what we see. So what we tried to do is a couple of years ago, we had really great success with it, was sort of work on the rebranding of it, as opposed to, oh my God, you have to eat your vegetables and do this. Be like, this is a great opportunity for you to show what you know. And you go into this a little bit skeptical because the kids really get into it. So we make it, make it with a lot of fanfare. So we have poster contests and we have chants that we do. Like this all came from a documentary that I saw in Mississippi. They get up, they teach the kids. I'll do it right now, but it's shameful me doing it. But they're like, pork chop, greasy, MCAS, easy. And they teach the kids this, and it's just the idea of like we're just building a culture of yes, we're ready for this, and this is a great opportunity because I've been working so hard that I get to show this, and so that's what we've tried to do over the last couple of years is to sort of change the narrative on that. The change from the state in terms of the high school requirement doesn't really impact us. The kids aren't really thinking about high school when they do this. So they're the other thing that we did that I think is really helpful is a few years ago, was it 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, I was adamant we have to be able to find a way to do all the tests on Monday, right? If you're taking math, the whole school is taking math on the same day. It used to be that 6th grade math would go for these 2 days, and then seventh grade math, and then eighth grade math. And so the whole schedule was destroyed in the spring because you have to have alternate schedules. Everything is up in the air, makeups, all of these things. Now we say, okay, this is math session one day, this is math session 2 days, and all three grades take it at the same time. I mean, the building is bursting and with people in spaces, it's all hands on deck. But I think that's the other part too, is we minimize the amount of test taking time so to try and eliminate that fatigue. So that when our eighth graders, for example, do get to their civics test, it's not like, oh my God, we've been testing and having these crazy schedules for the last 2 months. We try to shorten that up.
So you minimize the obstruction
Yeah,
of
exactly. Right, what's the obstacle and then what's the plan, right? The
Yeah.
obstacle is the kids just get tired of
Yeah.
doing it, so how do you plan it? Cut down that time.
Yeah.
Executive function.
Yes,
Mic drop. All right,
thank you.
yeah, anything else?
Have you come up with any ideas, strategies for kind of making up the time all those teachers are losing in class time? I mean, that's one of the things that I heard as a complaint is we would love to teach this and this and this and this, but the MCAT is gonna test on this. So for 2 weeks, so for a month we teach on this thing, and then when they take the test, and it's like, and I felt like some of my teacher friends would be like, it's like a month lost, and is so I love that, you're really minimizing when they take it, but is there also a way to retake that time back?
It's difficult because I'll use math for an example. You know what's supposed to be on the test, but obviously every year the test is a little bit different in what the focus is. So it's really, you're just chasing your tail as an athlete. You're hoping that you've done the things that are going to show up, or at least that you've instilled the skills so that if a student says, I've never seen this before, they go, well, you know what, I don't know how to do this, but I know this, this, and this. And based on that, I should be able to solve it. That's where we want to get kids to be. But sometimes you get to the end and you're taking a test in early May, you've got 6 weeks of teaching left, all those standards that you're unable to hit. So plus then when the test is over, I think a lot of times kids feel like, well, I'm done for the year, right? MCAS is over, we're out of here in a month. So you're really playing with that. It's difficult to recoup that time. That's why we're so careful with it when we have it and try not to do that. But we try to make sure that the schedule stays as routine as we can. And we don't spend a lot of time doing non-curricular things when they're appropriate, and then when, because you need it from time to time. But I believe my math teacher will tell you that every minute is important. And every time I schedule something that takes away from that, I hear about it. So they're very dedicated to this. But there isn't an easy answer to that.
Yeah.
How you build that time back.
Didn't mean to pin you down, and just like
You're not pinning me down.
it seems like the
reality.
ongoing conversation about MCAS was a lot of
Yeah,
we're losing class time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when you, like I said, when you have different schedules, the routines that kids get used to, and some kids are very routine oriented. So if you have your unified arts class at 10 o'clock in the morning, now you have it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that throws everything off.
It
And
throws the whole
so
day.
we do see the impact of that, especially with the younger kids, 11, 12 years olds. They can struggle with those routine changes. So it's not just a Littleton thing, it's just a middle school, high school thing everywhere. But if I had the answer to that, I'd be on the road. And you'd see me sit on the cover of a book
Very
saying, how to
famous.
solve this, yes.
But we have had for years had the philosophy that you don't teach the test, you teach your curriculum. And if your curriculum incorporates standards, you will do fine on the MCAS test. So we've never encouraged teaching to the MCAS test. Some of the things we have done is we've maybe taken some samples of essay prompts that said, oh, this is better than what we're doing. And we incorporate them into the curriculum. But I would never, as a superintendent, accept teachers teaching to a test. We teach the curriculum. If you teach it well, our kids will do well.
And it's something we focus on. One of the hard parts of that, though, is being in a small district. If you're the sixth grade math teacher, you're the only sixth grade math teacher in town. So, your principal gets up and shows how you did, and there's no ambiguity about who that is. And so there is a little, self-pressure to put on to be like, listen, I don't want to be the one why did that go down like that? And so teachers do put unnecessary stress. Kelly's right. We don't ever talk about teaching to the test. Those words never come out or anything akin to it. But I think teachers are just naturally competitive against themselves, and they want to see their kids doing well. And so sometimes it can be unnecessarily difficult when it comes to that. But it's large districts you can kind of hide.
I'll just echo what everyone said. I think the results are phenomenal. Trend looks good. It's funny that you mentioned, you know, the sixth grade math teacher by way of example, and then in here you had, you know, staffing changes sixth, seventh grade. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, geez. So I will say, I hope, you know, I hope that situation is exactly what you hope it turns out to be, and fingers crossed that you've got some consistency there, because I think that'll make a big difference for you. Splitting that ELA time at the sixth grade level, a couple of years now, like tremendous results back to back years, awesome. I would like to see you guys stick with that. I would wish we could continue that in seventh and eighth grade all the way through.
You write the checks. We're spending money. I mean, talking to that guy, right?
But yeah, awesome job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The same, you know, IEP issues, some,
Gonna see that across the board.
yeah, some cohort, some challenges there, but there, you know, it's not just the information that's in the presentation. There's other supporting information with it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right.
All right, bring it on home to Russell Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just dive right into the third grade and we'll kick it off. Third graders, our youngsters' first glimpse and attempt at MCAS. Last year's third graders, we don't have any student growth percentile data for obvious reasons, because we have no data to compare them to, as it's their first time. But in terms of meeting and exceeding data for ELA in third grade last year, 58% of our students were meeting or exceeding. That was down 2% from the year prior. And our special education students, 13% of those students met or exceeded. That's compared to 2% fewer than last year's data. But I'm glad that Jason mentioned the cohort kind of reminder of comparing to last year, because those are different students, and especially when you're talking about a subgroup like special education students, sometimes we're talking about caseloads as small as 10 to 12 to 15. So, you know, a few students can really throw those percentages in lots of different ways. So it's just helpful to keep that in mind as we're looking at that comparison data from year to year. Move on to third grade math. Again, good showing for meeting or exceeding for our third graders with math. 62% of those students met or exceeded. That's a 4% increase from previous year. And 13% of our students met or exceeded. I think that's the same percentage as ELA, which is down 17% from the year prior. Our current fifth graders, fifth graders are doing well in that capacity. But overall, for our all students category, an increase of 4%, which I think you'll see as a trend going through our math data. The fourth grade. So fourth grade, now we have some student growth percentile data here. Our students were the 49.1 percentile, which is right in that average range, 50 percentile being right in that average. Our meeting or exceeding data, 53% of our students, which was down 2%. For our special education cohort, 14% of those students met or exceeded, which is an increase of 9% for our fourth grade ELA. What I think is going to be helpful for our fourth and fifth grade data is to look at those line graphs to see kind of where the ELA or math over the last few years is either on the upslope or taking a down tick from the last year. On the math, please. Thank you. So fourth grade math. A higher student growth percentile, above that 50th percentile, and 57% of our students meeting or exceeding, which is around the same as the year previously. The student growth percentile for fourth grader in math was a little bit lower, but the same number of students were meeting or exceeding in that special education cohort. Uptick in math on that line graph there. On the fifth grade. In the typical or moderate range for student growth percentile in fifth grade ELA, 48% of our students were meeting or exceeding, down a little bit from the previous year, as you can see in that line graph. And for our special education students with ELA and math, the grid is showing we had 4% of our students meeting or exceeding, which was 10% below where we were the previous year. And our fifth graders take their science MCAS for the first time, fifth, eighth, and then in 10th grade, they have science. And good student, oh, I'm sorry, we're looking at math right now. 59% student growth percentile, 60% of our students meeting or exceeding. So again, that line graph is moving up a little bit. Similar story with our special education cohort there, 13% meeting or exceeding, and it's 13% below where we were the previous year. Here we have science. And we're kind of right in line with where we were previous years, 63% meeting or exceeding, which is right where we were the previous year, and a dip in the number of students who are meeting or exceeding that special education cohort. So in terms of the impressions, we had a lot of strengths at Russell Street School. The all students average was in the typical growth range for all content areas, with the 4th and 5th grade math nearing that 60th percentile. And I'll highlight that math right now. If you notice those line graphs going up a little bit in math over the last 3 years, I think that's indicative of the Into Math curriculum that we rolled out now 3 years. This is year 4 for Into Math. So I think that's showing, as incremental as those improvements have been, that they are showing improvement with our math data. So I think that we're on the right track with our Into Math curriculum, and it was the right call, and we continue to see growth and improvement in our math data year over year. 4th and 5th grade ELA, we had 18 students move from the partially meeting strand to the meeting expectations. Those are the students that we tend to keep our eye on. They might be right on the cusp from year to year. They miss that meeting expectations by a point or two. Oftentimes, those are students that are making use of our Title I program or our Tier 2 interventions. So we keep a close eye on those students to push them over that threshold into the meeting expectations. So I was happy to see that we had 18 students move that way in ELA. 14 students make the jump from partially meeting to meeting expectations in math. And when we look at math a little bit more closely, in grades 3, 4, and 5, all of our those individualized standards that you mentioned that we see on the item analysis, all of our students were exceeding the state average on those standards, with many dozens of those standards being at least 10% percentage points better than the state average on those individualized standards. So again, that's a really good data point that shows that the math instruction that's happening at Russell Street is really solid, and our students are gaining the skills that they need in that math. Challenges, as we saw with some of the other schools in the data points, there's a large disparity between that meets and exceeds percentages between the all students subgroup and the students with disability subgroups, something that I'll get to when we talk about our next steps. The student growth percentile was under the 50th percentile for a different subgroup, which is the high needs subgroup. And that's one that I look at often because it includes our students on IEPs, our low income students, and our multilingual learners. So those are the students that we want to keep an eye on. And a challenge for last year, those are the students that often need to grow more than a year's worth within the last year to make sure that they can make those gains and close that achievement gap. So that was something that we're still working on. Again, something that we can address in our next steps. And just one more, we had more students. We talked about moving from partially meeting up to meeting standards. We did have some students that went the other way last year, and we had more students move that way on the ELA assessment than on math. And I think that gets to, now we can flip to our to the next slide with our next steps, because this really drives right into what I think is a really clear-cut example of year one of a new implementation of a curriculum. With Wit and Wisdom. I showed this data to our school-based leadership team, and before I showed them the data, I said, just give me your predictions, how you think we scored just in the aggregate on the whole with math and with ELA, and the teachers were spot on. I said, I bet we were right on track with math and we made some improvements, and I am willing to bet that our ELA data has some room to grow. And that's exactly what our MCAS data showed last year. And that's really why this MCAS data being one of the big data points as to our school improvement goal for this year. And to get to the essential question, Justin, that you mentioned at the beginning of this is how are we using MCAS to make curricular improvements in the schools? We see what happened with our ELA data. Not it wasn't what we had hoped for, but I think it was not unexpected to see a slight dip in year one, launching a new curriculum where we were doing everything as written within the program. So getting back to our school improvement goal, right, adjust it, continuing to implement wit and wisdom with a focus on adjusting and adapting that program to better meet the needs of our students through universal design for learning. Because when we do that, we give our teachers the ability to adjust and adapt and differentiate and scaffold in ways that better meet the needs of their students. We're going to see them have better access points to the curriculum that's in front of them and show better growth in their ELA and their reading comprehension. Second next step to go along with that, our grade 3 teachers are going to be trained in and eventually launch the GEODS program, which is a sister program to Wit and Wisdom that focuses more on decoding text and getting more books in students' hands. That was one of the things that one of the reflections that our teachers made last year is we want our students to be, reading more with a book in their hand than reading to a teacher, so that when they sit down for that MCAS, they can be presented with a passage and have the decoding skills and the stamina to get through those passages and really work through them so that they can do their best work in answering the questions that are asked from those passages. So starting after the new year, our third grade teachers will get some professional development, and then they will get those GEODS curriculum, that those programs and those books that are aligned to the Wit and Wisdom themes for each module, and we'll get more books in our third graders' hands so they can practice. The third next step is we've done that item analysis and of MCAS and our benchmark assessment data to identify some small groups for our win blocks. And I want to work with our grade level teams to adjust how we are using that 30-minute win block that every grade level gets each day to find some strategic groupings based on the standards that students may be struggling in or the areas that they may need a little extra work on. And we can have students move a little more creatively around the grade level hallways so that they can really get what they need that's targeted towards the skills and standards that they may need a little extra work on based on the assessment data. So that's where Russell Street's going to go.
I'm trying to be aware of the alphabet soup that we use when we talk about education, and that we're not all educators.
Yes.
So you gave a nice definition of a win block, but maybe if you could
yes,
unpack that acronym.
Yes. So what I need, and that is oftentimes, so it's built into our students' schedule every day. Oftentimes, that's when a lot of our students may get related services. They may be pulled out for specialized service that they have on a plan. They may be working with an interventionist, a Title I teacher. They may be working with their classroom teacher in order to get some extension activities because they're, they're ready to fly off on their own and do their own thing. But it's really an opportunity for a student to get what they need, and it is on us as the educators to find the best use of that time for each student so that we can really pinpoint and target what that individual student needs so that they can take.
And this is like an elementary phenomenon, right? I don't see it so much at the middle and high schools. The win block.
No, it started in elementary and has shifted upwards. And so what the language changes, so a lot of times it's used as like a flex block. So we do have, middle school does have it built into their schedule. High school now for a couple of years also has a flex block built in. Okay. And it's really the intention is the same at heart as the elementary. So it is something over the past 10, 12 years that has started to shift from elementary.
And what's it called at the middle school?
What, flex block?
Flex block.
At the high school, we run it every day,
Okay.
9:10 to 9:45.
Anyway, thank you for this detailed analysis. I, as a curriculum person, I'm always interested in the item analysis because I think that's got the biggest long-term implications. And while we're defining things, if you could elaborate a little bit about what a decodable reader is that, am I correct in assuming that these are books that are leveled so that students are able to read something at their own reading level, whether or not that's on grade level, and then they keep moving up?
So we've moved away from what leveled reading for students. the decodables are at grade level, but I think 90% of the words within those decodable books should be accessible to 80 to 90% of our students in that grade level, using the foundations materials that they've had since kindergarten. This is kind of the next level up so that they can get books in their hands that they will be able to reasonably read independently in order to practice those foundational reading skills that they're solidifying in the third grade.
Okay, thank you. And one more question is, it's interesting to see the lag with adopting a new curriculum, and then, you know, it takes some time for everyone to adapt their instruction, especially with such a hard pivot in pedagogy that is represented with Wit and Wisdom. I mean, that was a huge shift. Was the shift, you might not have been in the district when we shifted into math, but do you know if that was a hard pivot as well for the teachers?
I wasn't here, but I can make a prediction that it wasn't as hard of a pivot as Wit and Wisdom was.
Yeah.
The shift to a knowledge-based curriculum that really did away with that leveled reading was a very stark shift for most educators, not just in Littleton, but anyone who was adopting a knowledge-based curriculum. So,
which everybody is doing.
Correct.
It's everywhere.
Correct.
But and so it's really interesting to see what the lag time is with. You know, I'm happy to see with the item analysis that you're seeing that the curriculum is aligned to the standards. So that's awesome.
Yes.
But then, you know, it just takes time for teachers to start to feel proficient. Like nobody ever feels like they're their best selves as a teacher at the first year of curriculum, because you're figuring it out on the fly. So it's really great news that the math scores are really starting to reflect this great math curriculum that we have. So, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the future with your Wit and Wisdom.
I think that this data shows again what we've said many times, that the implementation timeline for a new curriculum is 3 to 5 years. It is not one. And if we think, you know, I think back to when I presented the school improvement goals, that, you know, in year one of Wit and Wisdom, we asked our teachers to teach the curriculum as written so that we could get a better understanding of what's in this curriculum. I think what the data shows is we got our feet wet, where, you know, we know what the curriculum is, but the way that it is written is not conducive for every single student that we have at Russell Street. So therefore, we need to shift some things now that we know what's in this curriculum to better meet the needs of all of our kids.
That's awesome.
So I guess along those same lines, I'm glad you mentioned Wit and Wisdom, because I was actually going to ask this last year, which makes sense. But and your point of it taking 3 to 5 years, but this grade 3 now, for example, let's just take 42% are partially or below. And you had talked about that win block, but that, I mean, and I know we have small classes, but that's a large group of students. If we're talking about sort of the group that you're mentioning in the win block that needs support, how do you, and now they're grade 4, right? We don't want to wait for them to get to grade 7.
Right.
So how are there sort of targeted interventions you're thinking for such a large group of students in grade 4 and grade 5? Also, as the teachers I know are sort of adjusting.
A couple things. One, on the curriculum, not only was Wit and Wisdom a really sharp pivot for our teachers last year, it was a sharp pivot for a lot of our students last year too. And so much so that Wit and Wisdom in year 1 has what they call a module 0, in order to get students prepared for and to understand some of the most common types of lessons that students will have within Wit and Wisdom. We didn't have to do module 0 this year at Russell Street because our students already had a year of Wit and Wisdom under their belt already. They still did module 0 in kindergarten and first grade because it's new to those students. But our Russell Street students are now coming in knowing the routines of Wit and Wisdom, knowing what's going to be asked of them, knowing that they're going to be reading really difficult texts that they're going to have to think hard about and write a lot about. So I think that in and of itself will get to some of the areas of the students that maybe it was a big shock for them last year, but now it's becoming the norm of what is expected within their literacy block. For the students that still need that extra support, yes, we have lots of benchmark assessment data that we look at, criteria that students have to meet in order to receive Title I intervention. We have other students that are meeting with teachers and other interventionists, on an as needed basis when they have something that is just tripping them up that they need a little more work on. And we're consistently adjusting what's happening in the classroom to make sure that if there's something that we need to spend 15 more minutes on to make sure if there's that small group that I need to pull because I collected that exit ticket and I have these 5 students that I just want to make sure get it. Teachers are constantly doing that assessment, reflection, and then adjustment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I was talking about.
Before we close out that topic, I don't know, Matt, Mike, like if either one of you would like to just address the school committee on the conversation that we had this afternoon related to that IEP subgroup. The information, the way that it's displayed in the packet, it's like we look at grade level by grade level by grade level, and sort of the theme across, it's like 15 of the 18 tests or something like that. It's a drop in the in the subgroup of the IEP. So I was kind of scratching my head as to like, well, it's not just, we can't just explain it as a cohort. Like one cohort had a different sample size and it's different kids, but if it's across the entire district, perhaps there's something else going on. And I had a conversation with Mike and Beth this afternoon, and there's plenty of other data for them to be looking at. And it's not just, we'll try harder next year or something like it's not that something didn't go right. It's just that the way the data is presented, it doesn't look favorable upon tonight's presentation, but there's other information to share. And I don't want to gloss over it, right? For the committee's benefit, for the public's benefit, like it's important that we dig in on this. So.
Sure. I don't just want to speak vaguely. I know we did have a pretty good conversation this morning, but this afternoon, but you actually said what the biggest point to remember about IEP score specifically is you have to compare the student to themselves. And that was a big focal point earlier in one of the conversations, I think when John was up here. SGP is exactly what we're doing in that data point and comparing to similar students of that who scored in that area in the state. So when you look for IEP specific subgroup, you have to look at the SGP as the primary metric. When you look at the SGP in some grades, and I have some numbers here so I can kind of pull out some highlights. I know it's all on the spot and not shared, but one of the things that stands out is you can look at grade 6 ELA, for example. When you're looking at just specific IEP, meeting or exceeding, you see 11%. And you're like, that doesn't sound great.
Mm-hmm.
We want our kids to be achieving at a high level. But there's 2 things to consider. One, you're talking about 18 kids. 18 kids. That's how many are on an IEP in 6th grade that took the ELA MCAS. The piece that I want to address is their SGP was 61 and 50 is moderate, the average. So if you're scoring above that, you're scoring above, I think it's in the upper set, you're above 70% of the similar scored students in the previous year that you were on this, like, so cohort wise, your scaled score last year compared to your scaled score this year is what they derive the SGP from. It's that base algorithm. That's everybody that scored similar to you. Did you grow more than them or did you grow less than them? Right? So you see how it takes your performance, it measures it against similar performances, and then spits out a growth metric for you. That's what we have to look at. The other thing you don't consider when you talk about IEPs, and this is any grade cohort, you ask about the 3rd grade cohort and then watch them go all the way through 10th grade. Those kids are going to stay the same on the Aspen rolls. What's not going to stay the same is who's eligible for an IEP each. The kids who are doing well, who are responding to the intervention, who are making progress, every 3 years get reevaluated. And if they're doing well, we're losing them off our numbers. You're gaining them on the general ed numbers, or maybe the 504. They're still maybe in the high needs population, but they're not on the IEP subgroup. But the kids that come on the IEP subgroup are the students that are exceptionally struggling as the grades get more challenging. So you're not looking at an IEP subgroup the way you're looking at a grade cohort. Moving on, you're looking at a subgroup that has to perform well, getting its highest performers taken away and getting the lowest performers added to it. And our numbers are not dropping out. They're stable, if anything. right? So I can't stand up here and say, we have all this tremendous growth, but what I can say is that when we find a student in this district who needs support, we go in and we stabilize their academic program for them, and we put them in a position to succeed. We had a conversation earlier today about the metric of meeting and exceeding expectation, but when we do an IEP evaluation, we talk about FAPE. We talk about FAPE, free and appropriate education. That's the metric for eligibility. When you look at a sophomore in high school taking the MCAS, they're getting a diploma at partially needed. So if you have a student with a disability, you're setting them at a starting point much lower than a general ed student who's a typical neurotypical functioning student, but yet you're moving the goalpost further for them because they have to work for it. So when you see a student 2 years ago that was taking the MCAS in 10th grade with a math disability, an SLD and specific learning disability in math, and they earned a 490 on the MCAS, they're not going to count against your meeting or exceeding, but they just earned themselves a diploma. So we're not considering their success, what the benchmark is for a student who has a disability. It's not a physical disability. It's still a disability. It's still them having to work and persevere in an area that is exceptionally more challenging for somebody who's neurotypical. So when we look at what we're doing for these kids, SGP is really the only number, and all of our numbers are in and around that 50, that moderate point. There are a couple that are concerning in pockets, but I would be remiss to give my colleagues who are not here from the special ed department credit that we've already started diving into this data. There are action plans going into place at every grade level to target what those specific needs are, because they are not full grades. They're not across subjects. They're just isolated, either math, 3rd grade, or ELA 6th grade, something like that, right? We're not looking at a systemic issue in special education. We are looking at fine tuning. And I just ask that we keep that in mind when we talk about what are our IEP subgroup numbers looking like, especially as the cohorts go on. Your cohorts are the same kids, but my cohort of IEP caseload students is only taking the students who have the most struggle, and we're passing back to your general ed cohort the students that we've done the most with, right? So we don't get that success by the time they get to 10th grade, but those 10th grade numbers sure looked good, and we're only getting the kids that are still that far below needing specially designed instruction to access things.
That is so clear. Thank you for explaining it that way.
Well, any
I
questions?
feel very enlightened.
I'm glad I could help.
It's intense.
One quick one.
Yes.
And I'm not expecting you to know the answer right now, but you're saying that a certain number of kids come off of IEPs each year, and that's not always going to be the goal for every student, right? It really depends on where they're at. Do we have any tracking for knowing how many kids in a grade?
Absolutely. I can give you down to the number for every year. I mean, it's not on the spot, but if you want that, that's readily available.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you so much. I got a lot out of our conversation this afternoon, and for you to be able to come here this evening and share this with the school committee. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're not looking very good on that overrun rate 45. Our second, that's okay. Our second presentation this evening is competency determination update. Inviting Director of Teaching and Learning, Beth Steele, back up to give a presentation on the high school CD updated policy and her request of first reading.
Okay, thank you.
You got it.
That was enlightening and also really enjoyable as a colleague to watch the passion that Mike Jarvis has for he is exactly where he should be. And that was just really beautiful. So thank you very much, Mike. Okay, so related, but not at all related now, shifting gears to competency determination. So to just provide some context to how we got where we are today. We know that last November, there was a ballot vote that changed how we determine competency determination within the state of Massachusetts. And so the ballot meant that we could no longer, the results of the ballot vote meant that we could no longer use MCAS results as determining competency for a high school diploma. And so we changed our policy on competency determination, which I may start using just CD for moving forward. We changed that last February in order to not be using MCAS as demonstration of the competency. And then last May, DESE decided to vote on updated regulations, which changed the CD again, which forces every single district in the state to go back to the table and re-update their policy or actually create a brand new policy with regards to CD. And so with that in mind, we have until the end of this year to submit our updated CD policy. The update that was required based in May that we are proposing here this evening is that we have to have 2 years of high school ELA. We have to have 1 year of Algebra 1, 1 year of geometry, 1 year of either biology, physics, chemistry, or technology or engineering. That is all reflective of what was previously administered for MCAS in 2023. We also have to show the aligned courses within our policy of how students can achieve showing mastery and completion of work in those courses. Additionally, for the class of 2027, starting with the class of 2027, those students also have to demonstrate competency in 1 year of US history. So we've expanded it to also include history now. In addition to these updates, there was also more specific considerations for students with disabilities, English language learners, and students that might be late enrolling into our district. We also had to include an appeals process in our CD. This is all new that we did not have to have back initially in February. And then also what DESE did require is actually for us to separate into 2 separate policies. So what we had done in February was that we came to you and we asked for an update to our graduation requirement policy. And in that, it talked about our CD. And now what DESE is requiring is a whole separate policy. So graduation requirements, which are our local graduation requirements, is an independent policy. And what we are proposing forward for first reading this evening is the competency determination policy. So while they may seem related, they are 2 separate entities and policies in of themselves. The template that you have in your packet, or excuse me, the policy that you have, the proposed policy that you have in your packet, we use the MASC template. They did come out towards the end of the summer with a template for the state. And so we did take that template and we tweaked it with the information that we wanted to have for our district. And so as you're reading the policy, you will see what we are considering to show mastery, the coursework requirements in those 3 areas for the class of 2026, 4 areas starting with the class of 2027, the aligned courses that we offer within our district for those, and then the additional considerations as required by DESE for students with disabilities, the English language learners, late enrolling students. You'll also see the appeals process that we had to work through as well in that policy. And so I know I'm asking for a first reading, so I'm not going to go word for word, but I want to provide context as to what you have in front of you this evening. And so I'm happy to answer questions or to provide more information or context if I am able to, but also want to put it forth so that it be a first reading.
Questions or comments from Ms. Deal?
It's funny reading through this, it just makes me so glad that the ballot initiative went the way it did, because now students get all of the supports that they're entitled to on their IEPs to graduate from high school. Whereas with the MCAS, I mean, they would get their test taking accommodations on their IEP, but they wouldn't be able to learn with their IEP the way they're going to be allowed to with this new CD. So that part made me really happy. I just had a few little word tweaks, but I don't know if are you on the packet? I put some comments on the Google Doc, just wordsmithing a little bit, but other than that, it looked. Oh, I did have one question about the foundational level of English proficiency. Level 1 and 2, that seemed like a low bar, but maybe it doesn't align with the WIDA framework that I'm thinking of.
For access, it does. That actually is language that comes about the recommendation from the state.
Oh, okay.
And so while we, one of the things that the state continuously said, we want to maintain the rigor, we want to keep where we're at, but also don't push it further, don't make it harder necessarily for our students. And so and that's why the MASC template was helpful, because it did incorporate the state's recommendation, and that is exactly what actually comes from the state.
Okay,
So we chose to leave it as they indicated.
resolve that comment.
Perfect, thank you.
Question?
In the first paragraph, when highlighted, Massachusetts, okay, measured by the high school English language arts, mathematics and science MCAS assessments administered in 2023. I mean, does that mean that this is going to just be a part? Is that MCAS results? Or I'm sorry, I'm just confused at what MCAS is in there.
Yeah, so that, again, that is in the template. And what that is saying is that students have to demonstrate proficiency in the content areas that were administered through MCAS in 2023.
Oh, okay.
So that just translates to our students have to demonstrate proficiency in ELA, geometry, algebra 1, and then any one of this multiple science options, like the biology, the physics, the chemistry, technology, or engineering. And so it just provides that context for content areas.
What they should be good at.
Exactly,
Not.
Yeah, which by the next line down from that paragraph, an additional requirement for mastery in U.S. history will apply to the graduating class of 2027. They had to separate that out because there was no
Civics or history, for the last time,
Exactly.
No, I'm old enough to remember when it was just English or something. It was just.
So do you think, I mean, along that same comment, would it be clearer just to say of the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks without identifying the topics that were on the 2023 MCAS? Because this is moving forward, this is our policy moving forward, that we're going to be aligning to all of the frameworks, not just the ones that were tested on the 2023 MCAS, right?
Well, not necessarily, because, for example, in math, it's very specific. It has to be algebra 1 and geometry. So it does have to be related to what was offered, the content that was offered in the MCAS 2023. So that's why we do have to have very specific, because of math and because of science. They are specific content areas which relate to specific courses that our students need to demonstrate.
But now it won't just be limited to biology. Now they can show proficiency in any of the science domains.
Which was true for MCAS as well. They could have taken the chemistry MCAS. They could have taken physics MCAS.
Right. So which hardly got ever, I mean, a lot of districts didn't even administer those. So, okay, thank you. That resolved that comment. And then there was just one more that I had way up at the top paragraph. I want to like avoid talking about the Common Core, because that could be misinterpreted as that thing that caused so much controversy several years back. So would it be possible just to say, have it read of common skills and competencies without using the word common and core next to each other to potentially tweak people?
That's a recommendation. That's part of the MASC template. And so I will defer to allowing you to have.
So this is a template that we can modify with our vote.
So when they gave that to us, they didn't mean the Common Core
They
that
didn't
we
mean the
all.
Common Core, but you could interpret it that
Oh,
way by
it
mistake.
really, it does. It tweaks me the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I don't want to change the meaning of the sentence. I just want to change the wording so that people don't think we're following the Common Core, because they're gonna.
Why don't we just add the Massachusetts Common Core?
Well, we don't
That was a
have the
thing.
Massachusetts Common Core, so we incorporated that into our frameworks and we no longer call it the Common Core.
Hold on,
Yeah,
I wrote an op-ed for the Boston Globe back then. And we have our Massachusetts standards that align and they go beyond the common. So the Massachusetts Common Core is a phrase that's still valid. Common Core hasn't disappeared
right.
from.
I don't think people use that anymore, though.
Well,
It's like the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks.
never had a
Includes,
statement from Massachusetts Department of Education that said that eradicated the Common Core, right? So I just want to be careful that we hold true to what the state still believes. And I Beth, have you ever had anything from the state saying that Common Core just doesn't exist?
It's Common Core in Massachusetts, we use built upon Common Core, right? So it's extended beyond Common Core. I think what's interesting about this, so I think, to be honest, I think we could either drop Common or we could drop Core, right? I think you can actually drop either one of them to get the sentiment that what you're feeling.
Of course.
I think the other piece to this is that we're going to submit this to DESE. And DESE's going to read through all of them, and we might be going through a very similar experience again. After DESE has reviewed all of the district policies, we might be coming back and having to make adjustments. And DESE that might be a hill that they die on, right? That says, nope, it has to be there.
Yeah.
And so I think we can tweak it. We approve it as a district, we submit it to DESE, and then there is potential because of the graduation council that the governor has also put together, that DESE's working on, that we might have to make adaptations to this in the coming year or so, until it becomes kind of a solidified policy that we don't necessarily have to revisit every year.
So it's gonna be fluid.
I think there's potential for that for the near future. And I say that because in February, we had to make an adjustment, right? Now we're having to make an adjustment. And each time, now we have to submit to the state. Whereas before we didn't have to necessarily submit to the state. So now the state wants to read everyone's in order to kind of see and glean what's common, what's not common. So I'm making a prediction that there might be more forthcoming based on the steps that the state is taking at this time.
Well, I'm just suggesting removing the word core of, and if they want to put it back in, we can put it back in.
It's interesting because without the capital C's, just if you read it as a sentence, I don't even know why both those words are there, because it's have achieved mastery of skills, competencies, and knowledge in said areas would make a lot more sense. The words common and core in this sentence don't even seem.
That's what I was suggesting.
I'm saying both the words, not even taking out one, like,
Yeah.
But apparently they're important to be there.
Well,
I think
it's interesting because even the way that sentence, when you brought that up, it gave me a very different perspective. They're really not referring to the Common Core in that sentence.
No.
Right. So
It's just confusing. Mastery of skills, competencies, and knowledge.
So I changed my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think, whenever we go through policies, we look to clarify the wording.
Yeah.
And if this is going to be on the policy, I would like to have that isn't misinterpreted by.
Do we propose that in second read? Or, like we're in first?
So we can make the change first.
Yeah. I mean, Alex, can you see the comment that I put on? Yeah. So that's,
I can, do we make motions?
well, this is just the first reading.
This first reading.
We don't make motions.
No.
Yeah, because I could be behind just striking Common Core right there, and because mastery of the skills, competencies, and knowledge in said area in.
Right. So let's not put in a phrase that could be confusing.
Even if it wasn't capital C's, trademarked whatever curriculum, that just strikes me as a weird way to say it. Mastery of the Common Core of skills, competencies.
And we periodically find weird wording in the mask policies, right? So this is not unusual.
So it sounds like there's agreement that
Yeah,
we
just need a
strike
consensus and we can.
Common Core of,
move on.
which we can do.
Or even, to just strike core.
Skills,
competencies, and So it would read achieved mastery of the common skills, competencies, and knowledge in said areas.
What is the point of common? That's my
Just,
question.
Yeah, right.
just strike
We could take
Common
that out
into.
for-
Yeah.
Common
Yeah.
Core of, yeah.
And then
agree.
I feel like we avoid
Yeah.
misunderstanding.
Mastery of skills, competencies, and
We're
knowledge.
not
in
talking
said
about mastery of common skill. We're talking about
Right.
mastery of
Yeah.
skills.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Skills,
I'll change
competencies.
it
and
once I sit down.
knowledge. Thanks, yeah.
Is the word mastery also a That's probably state provided language, and like, that's the one thing that stuck out as odd to me. And I actually Googled what does mastery mean? It doesn't mean like really what I think it means, which is like you're truly defined as an expert in that area and you've, but I do think it's an odd choice because we go on to say that basically you need a 60 or above, you need a passing score. And we just looked at the MCAS stuff and we're talking about partially meeting expectations and receiving a diploma.
Right.
And it seems odd that we would classify as someone having mastered something and also partially meeting a state standard and then giving them a diploma.
This was a big discussion among the Principals Association and among directors of curriculum and teaching and learning. This was that word alone. It's funny you picked up on that too, because we all did too. And everybody's wrestling with how to massage it into the policy language.
So it is part of, we have to have, we have to.
Demonstrating proficiency. skills.
I know, but state.
So the state's
the
requiring
state
mastery, the
requires
state's
mastery.
requiring, what is your definition of mastery? So when we
Yeah.
submit, we have to say, what is Littleton Public Schools definition of mastery? And I have a regional group of administrators, and we had a very long conversation about this as well. And all of us, we all share in order to try and be in alignment and see, what are you doing? This is what we're doing. This is what we're thinking. And the commonality is, and it feels very funny to say you can demonstrate mastery with 60%. That is what we are establishing, because you can get 60% and get your diploma and continue on and do really amazing things, right? And so the state is very particular with the word course completion, with phrases course completion and mastery. Beyond that.
I'm not gonna die on the hill. I just think it's a
Yeah.
poor choice of words.
Yeah.
Some of us already tried.
Achieve mastery, but only satisfactorily complete.
Yes. Yeah, that's what they're,
But you're talking about all students.
Yes.
well, wouldn't proficiency be, I like Justin said, you have a better word. You
I
came up with
believe
a
you,
better
though,
word.
that is the hill that they will die on.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a hill to die on, but it's still like,
Yeah.
that's kind of worrisome that our state leaders are.
Sort of like an unrelated question, but in the mathematics, we say algebra 1, geometry, ways in which you complete this are by algebra 1 or geometry, but then we also list foundations of high school math 1, foundations of high school math 2. What is that?
So Foundations of High School Math 1, Foundations of High School Math 2 are sub-separate math courses that still cover the Algebra 1 standards and the geometry standards. And so if it comes up on a transcript,
Okay.
those students, even though it doesn't say Algebra 1, instead it's going to say Foundations of High School Math 1. And we know that that's covering the same standards as Algebra 1. And so the students are able to get through using that.
Okay, so it's maybe not as rigorous of a curriculum, different things.
Same problem.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, so Desi is picking US history as the social studies course that they must. Well, very interesting. Yeah, I'm starting to realize we don't have as much flexibility over this policy as we do with most of them, huh?
It got stricter with the May, right, with their passing of, I think, because between November and us having to submit for February, there was a lot of conversation too about ensuring that the seniors that were graduating last year knew what they needed to be, right? Because all of a sudden they're passing out the door. And so we had to say, well, how are you showing competency to actually earn that diploma, right? And so there was a little bit of a feeling of rush. And then once Desi was able to kind of have more time in May, they then decided, okay, here's the updated regulation, here are the updated guardrails. And it became a bit narrower as to what our local control could be.
And then Mask was in the room for these meetings, and that's why template is coming from them.
That I'm not sure of.
Oh.
I'm not sure who was part of the conversation at Steve.
Well, thank you for interpreting this for us and for all of your work with making it work for our district.
Yeah.
You, and you too. Don't want to leave out all of your hard work too.
Good job.
Thank you.
That was good on that. Thank you. Start this, we should go on graduation requirements, but we'll stick with the agenda.
Well, it is on the policy
No, I know,
part of it.
but it's,
We could, you know,
Want me
we
to talk
can
about graduation
do a first reading of graduation requirements, pretty simple.
It's simple.
why don't, that's what I'm thinking, since we're like,
We should.
already have that thought process going on, let's
Yeah.
move into that, so.
Just a deletion.
We're taking things slightly out of order here. What we're gonna talk about next are it's policy IKF graduation requirement. Thank you.
Perfect. So this policy is a bit simpler in the sense that we just had to go in and take out what we had added last year. And so anything related to competency determination, we took out of this graduation policy. And so you'll see in red any changes that were made. And then red and strike through is what was added and what we're now striking to take away from this because it's no longer needed. Because it's its own policy. And so we want to try and keep it clean and neat and only have local graduation requirements in IKF and have everything else in the competency determination policy instead. And so it does say the one kind of adjustment is on the last paragraph on the IKF, where it does state except for, it used to say the state MCAS requirements. Now we're just taking that out and replacing it simply with or except for the competency determination. So they do, like I said, that's why they are related, but yet separate.
Makes sense. Anybody have any questions about that or comments about our opportunity to revisit IKF anyways, but that's not really the intention.
My only comment is on some of the policies we do like cross references, with related policies. Do we do a cross reference here relating to CV? It's a technicality, but it's what it's mentioning.
You know, it's never. The source for this policy has always been. Graduation requirements are district created. We don't have a state graduation policy. So these courses are what we have determined for a number of years are necessary to be taken so that they're prepared for the next year. Students are prepared next year. It doesn't vary that much. I mean, John and I have looked at these things for years. They're all very similar, but I don't know of any, there might be, I don't know of any MGL reference to this.
No, I was thinking the cross reference. So we have cross references at the bottom of some policies to our own policies.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
saying, should we cross reference the CD? In this graduation, should we cross reference policy? What is
The CD isn't mentioned. in it.
policy
It's,
IKF?
Yes.
Yeah, so when
That was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. It is mentioned, so it.
Okay.
Like, are you referring to that second paragraph where it says all students will earn the competency determination?
I'm saying at the very bottom, if you scroll down to policy,
Steve, can you put on the screen the IKFE? And scroll down. You see where, yeah,
Cross reference.
No, it's okay.
there you go.
Yeah.
Go down, Steve. One more page, there you go.
Right there, cross reference.
you see cross refs,
Yep.
student handbook, IKF.
Yeah.
I'm saying in the IKF policy, we should write cross ref IKFE.
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
Oh,
good catch. Yes.
Good pickup.
I think that should be. Thank you for explaining why there's two.
Sure, yeah.
Done, everybody?
Yes.
All right. That concludes presentation portion of the evening and one, not two, first readings later on the agenda. This is our second opportunity for interested citizens. Take a brief pause, see if anybody wishes to speak before the school committee. Hearing none, seeing none, we will close that portion and we'll move through our subcommittee reports. So first up is PMBC.
Yep, the only thing of note is that the Boston Court over at the senior center for us to be fixed, so not to get too much into the minutia of it, but basically the way it was layered was incorrect and ended up basically being like little stones that were kind of rising up and creating a problem with the court. And the town was able to work with the contractor to get the contractor to pay for it, up in this way. So everything's getting fixed. And then other than that, we're meeting next week. That will be the first time we'll meet post the election results of Shaker Lane, so more to come.
Great. Budget subcommittee report. Jenny, do you want to carry that one?
The budget subcommittee did meet today and reviewed next year's the budget we are working to submit to the FinCom and select board and do this together. And I believe we've come to an agreement on what that budget will be. We are looking at 2 points. Do we want to go?
Yeah, to our
2.75?
correct. We completed our
This is-
first preliminary pass of the budget. We will something's going on. We will we'll submit to the town.
Yeah, sure.
Pause for this commercial. We'll submit to the town a budget increase of 2.75, which I want to thank superintendent, the business manager for their hard work, preparation for today's meeting. We spent about an hour and a half talking about the budget, changes that we need to make, some expenditures coming down the pipeline, and as well as we looked at our 10-year capital plan, and we've identified some really exciting. I'm excited about a couple of them. People laughing. Capital projects for fiscal year 26, which is the year we're in. Yes, and 27, and we hope to potentially knock these projects off this coming summer. So yeah, the budget committee's been pretty busy. More work to come as once we submit our numbers to the town, but looks like we're in pretty good shape. So we're proud of that.
Yeah, we're staying open to a meeting in person with FinCom and select board and talking to them a little bit more. So we're all on the same page. We feel like I think we all feel like we're in a really good place with FinCom and the select board. And I want to keep that going.
I feel like we really hit our stride, especially with the Shaker Lane project, everyone working together.
Yeah.
It's been great.
That was amazing.
All right, policy subcommittee. Take the lead here.
And go for it, Bino.
Yeah, so we had submitted a number of policies for first reading at the last meeting, which you have in front of you. And I think we're transferring all of those to second reading.
Right.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. And we've gone through 2 of the policies for first reading. The graduation requirement, the competency determination, and then we have 2 additional policies that we consider first reading tonight. And thank you, Alex. I just
So do we want to vote
the packet?
on the policies that have had a first reading? If this is second reading, do we vote to accept them?
Well,
We motion to accept them for second reading. And just highlighting the policy overview document makes it really easy so that you could see.
Yeah, it's also nice having the different colors, showing exactly where the changes were for the first reading and the second reading. Makes it easy for us.
Do we want to go through each one, or were there any questions about specific?
We spent a fair amount of time on last.
Yeah,
time.
we did
That's
go,
surprising.
yeah. we
Surprising
did,
amount of
yeah.
time.
A
That-
lot
that-
of them were typos.
I guess that's why I'm like,
Yeah, we
can we
got,
just accept
And
it?
just
we got
in
into
case
the
there's
weeds
questions.
on rodenticides, yeah.
Yeah.
Make
Let's,
them better.
You made them better.
Yeah.
so does anybody have anything to discuss as it relates to a second reading on anything we covered last time?
No.
I don't think so. So,
Just a simple motion to.
So I motion to accept the following policies for second reading. EB, EBAB, EBB, EC, EB, EB, EBH, EC, ECA, CAC, ECF, EBC.
Second.
passed, motion made and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And now we have two additional policies to visit for first readings.
Should I just watch
Sure, wait, I thought we kind of already looked at IKF and IKFE.
Yes, I think we did a vote. This
Uh,
motion.
well, let's talk about
We
HCB
vote
and
on-
KHB,
Okay.
and then let's.
I don't think we should go vote on the first reading, really. We just.
Motion to
Motion to
accept the
accept.
following policies, yeah. So we will, if we want to, and if we don't, we won't.
Cause we can do that.
So,
This is my meeting.
sorry,
This is our meeting. We can do what we want.
anyways, so this was sort of my ask, it was KCD and KH. And this came about because of my involvement in Littleton Youth Basketball and the need for an upgraded or updated scoreboard at the middle school. We got some preliminary pricing and Littleton Youth Basketball talked about trying to make a gift, a partial gift or something like that. Like maybe they would make a gift, maybe the school would, the school department could kick in a little bit of the money as well, and perhaps we could fundraise. Littleton Youth Basketball could fundraise. And with that fundraising might come an advertising opportunity for a lead sponsor. So when I look through the policies, what Littleton Youth Basketball is really looking for, acknowledged to solicit a sponsor where advertising would take place within the school building. And when you look at the policies, I just wanted to make sure that this would be okay. So policy KCD reads, public gifts and donations to schools, the superintendent will have the authority to accept gifts and offers of equipment for the schools in the name of the committee when the gift is of educational value and with a value less than 5,000. In the case of gifts from industry, business, or special interest groups, no extensive advertising or promotion may be involved in any donation to the schools. Gifts greater than 5,000 or that would involve changes to school plants or sites will be subject to school committee approval. Gifts will automatically become the property of the school system. Any gift of cash, whether or not intended by the donor for a specific purpose, will be handled as a separate account and expended at the discretion of the committee as provided by law. The committee directs the superintendent to assure that an appropriate expression of thanks is given to all donors. So, I guess my question for the committee is, in the case of gifts from industry, business, or special interest groups, no extensive advertising and promotion may be involved in any donation to the schools.
Do we get to interpret extensive? Like if,
Wordsmith this however you like.
well, I'm just gonna throw out, you know, if a local company puts up a scoreboard, can they put their little logo in the corner of it? I mean, would this?
The second policy actually talks about that,
Oh, okay.
so.
So let's look at this. I see, I think it's more covered in the first one that I just read, but let's go through the second one. So, KHB, advertising in schools. School business relationships based on sound principles and community input can contribute to high quality education. However, the school district must also protect the welfare of students and the integrity of the learning environment. Therefore, when working together, schools, community organizations, and businesses must ensure that educational values are not distorted in the process. The school committee will allow the use of advertising consistent with the criteria specified below. A, use of advertising permitted in connection with courses of study, which have specific lessons related to advertising. It'll be up to each school principal to decide whether the lessons related to advertising are appropriate. B, use of advertising is permitted in such supplementary classroom and library materials as newspapers, magazines, televisions, the internet. The internet and similar media where they are used in the classroom, such as current events or where they serve as an appropriate research tool. The school committee will allow advertising consistent with the criteria specified below. Paid advertising is permitted in yearbooks, school newspapers, theatrical productions, and event programs, as long as such advertising meets the criteria listed below. The building principal is responsible to review all material. Non-school organizations that are approved to use school grounds and facilities may use temporary advertising that is consistent with the criteria in the policy. Non-school organizations must comply with specific procedures and processes determined by the superintendent or the superintendent designate. Advertising must meet the following criteria, consistent with district and school academic standards and goals. All corporate support or activity shall be consistent with state, district, and school academic standards and goals. Commercial involvement must also be structured to meet identified educational needs, not commercial motives. Consistent in district policies and age appropriateness. All corporate support or activity must be consistent with district policies prohibiting discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, gender, gender identity, age, religion, sexual orientation, veteran status, limited English proficiency, handicap, or homelessness, and must be age appropriate for the students involved. We're almost there. 3, certain corporate support or activity prohibited. No corporate support or activity will be permitted in the district or in schools that promote the use of illicit drugs, alcohol, tobacco, or firearms, promotes hostility, violence, or disorder, attacks or demeans any ethnic, racial, or religious group, is libelous, thank you. Promotes any specific religion, promotes or opposes any particular political view, candidate, ballot question, inhibits the functioning of any school. All corporate business organizations support may only cite the organization's name, not specific products or services. Phrases such as your friends at, proudly supporting Littleton education, etc., may be used. The corporate business organizational review includes consideration of the primary products and services where usage of such product service would violate policies of the district. Sponsorship by individuals without attribution to a company, corporation, or service is allowed. The school committee will, on a case-by-case basis, consider corporate company identification and recognition for significant contributions greater than $5,000 in value to fund school facility capital items. Proposals must first go through the superintendent for preliminary review, meet the criteria listed above, and meet a specific need of the district. I suppose that's the only sentence I had to read. Proposals without review by the superintendent shall not be presented to the school committee for final consideration. Solicitation of sales or use of the name of the school system to promote any products excluding testimonials approved by the superintendent of the schools will not be permitted by the committee. So, having got through all that, I think my concern is addressed here, where it says the school committee will on a case-by-case basis consider corporate company identification and recognition for significant contributions greater than school facility capital items. Proposals must go through the superintendent for preliminary review, meet the criteria, and meet a need of the district. I think that's very comprehensive, and I also think it allows Littleton youth basketball to pursue its sponsorship opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
So would they be looking for temporary signage or permanent signage?
Traditionally, the way that it works, and I think it's a great deal for any corporate sponsor, is your name goes up there and it's up there as long as the scoreboard is.
So we take the scoreboard down.
Yeah.
So, you know, the Shaker Lane baseball field still has a scoreboard that doesn't work and it says Berry Pine Corporation on it.
Which also doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So, you know, it is just for you guys' benefit, like if we were to get a scoreboard that makes sense for the middle school, the expense is about $28,000. There's a couple options that would, of course, be less than that, but that would be the desire of the basketball program in town. So, you know, we'd be looking for a whatever, 20, 15, $10,000 sponsor and then trying to split the difference between the district and the Littleton Youth Basketball Organization.
And this has been done for many years. I mean, I was doing this in the eighties.
Yeah.
So for scoreboards. So this is going to do.
So did you want us to do a first read of this policy or we're bringing this?
I wanted to bring it to the school committee so that I had clear communication that this organization can solicit a corporate sponsorship. And of course, the corporate sponsorship, needs to be a business that would fit this criteria. But if so, there wouldn't be any trouble with implementing it. I didn't want to get, halfway through the process and find out that we don't feel that way anymore, or we want to make changes to the policy. So as long as we're still all in agreement that this policy is worded fine, I think that organization is fine to pursue that opportunity.
Is this a policy that we've previously adopted in the district, or did you get it from anyone? Is this from our policy? It's just interesting
That is it.
yeah.
Sorry, would you say?
So if you look at the bottom of the policy, it says that it was drafted by Acton Boxborough. So my question was, is this something that we adopted apparently way back in 2005?
I think that's the source. Maybe that's what we're quoting the source.
That's the
We
source.
Adopted in
Because
2005.
probably
Right.
MASC
That's
doesn't.
what it was.
Yeah.
Source.
Yeah. So if it has the letters on the top, that means it's already
It was
in
reviewed
our
in 2020.
repertoire.
So I was just talking to Vito, we might as well, if you're fine with it, why not do a first read on 2 policies and we've reviewed 2 other policies?
We just did it.
And add it to the
We sure did.
2025.
We hadn't looked at it in 5 years.
It's on our to-do list, so we just read it. We're happy to add.
Yeah.
first reading.
Motion made by Vino to accept the first reading. Is there a second?
Well, can I motion all 4?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, motion to accept the following policies for first reading, KCD, KHB, IKF, and IKF.
Second.
Motion made by Vino, seconded by Lynn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
You're doing all that homework.
Yeah. Well. And on our agenda, we also have Shaker Lane Building Committee update.
Obviously, we love the fact that the vote passed. I did want to mention that the subcommittee that's working on figuring out who the construction manager at risk will be, today, we're hoping to start whittling down the 8 bids that we have next week when we meet on Wednesday. We have a rubric and we're working through it. Bids seem pretty strong. I did also want to call out that the select board is looking to possibly do a survey about town meeting. Slightly off topic, but with sharing such a big thing at town meeting, so just saying if you were at town meeting, your opinions based on Shaker Lane vote and stuff that you would like to bring forward, look out for that.
Question on the bid process that you guys are going through. Is there, you met today.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that meeting took place, but that's not anyone's fault but mine. Is there opportunity for those public meetings? Is there an opportunity for public input during this process?
Absolutely. So they're virtual.
Okay,
At each meeting, we have public forum or public comment.
great.
Are they posted?
Yeah, they're posted 48 hours advance. So the next meeting will be Wednesday at 2:00. We want to get that posted immediately because obviously Tuesday is a holiday and tomorrow the town clerk's office is only open about half the day, so we want to make sure we have that calendar.
So the OPM is supposed to be at.
The
Conference.
Right, but Tuesday, we'll be driving down Tuesday.
It's Wednesday.
Oh, it's a Wednesday. We'll be
Wednesday, that's Wednesday.
Oh,
Wednesday at 2?
no.
No, it's the question.
Yep.
And Wednesday night, there's a Shaker Lane Building Committee,
Yes, thank you.
next Wednesday.
It's the 19th, isn't it?
I thought it was on the 2.
18th.
It was not next week? Oh, sorry, 19.
19th, Shaker Lane Building Committee. 80. We all set?
Good.
All right, before I ask Brennan, nope, I'm sorry. We're not all set. we have an update from the CPAC subcommittee.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so CPAC has met recently and they wanted me to announce a special opportunity that they have for families. It's on Tuesday, November 18th at 7 o'clock. CPAC is going to have a virtual meeting with Mara Schulman, who's a mediator with the Bureau of Special Education Appeals. So she's going to present an informational session on mediation and facilitation. So it's going to address what mediation is, how to access it, how it can be helpful when families and school districts are not in agreement. So she's also going to discuss how and when to access facilitated team meetings. So if there's families with special ed student or any family, if you want to attend this meeting on the 18th at 7 o'clock, the link for the Zoom meeting can be found on the School Now app and also on the principal newsletters. That's a statement from Sarah.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee reports, new business, old business, or committee? All right, our next meeting will be November 20th, 7 o'clock, Public Littleton Police Station Community Room. I'll take care of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Made by Sean,
Second.
seconded by Janine. All those in favor, keep by saying aye.
Aye.
Very much.